Teachers who regularly get invited to high school reunions. What are the most amazing transformations, common patterns, epic stories, saddest declines, etc. you've seen through the years? In high school I was pretty good friends with a guy that was a bit overweight, about 6 feet 4 inches, really smart and a bit nerdy. Lost track of him after high school, but saw him at our 10-year reunion. He was the talk of the reunion. Still tall, lost all the weight, and was in great shape, had long hair like Fabio, and was a doctor. He showed up with a beautiful wife. He gave us his contact info and invited us to Atlanta to stay with him in his huge house. After the reunion I tried to get in touch. Contact info didn't work, and through some sleuthing I found out he was neither married nor a doctor. He was still in good shape, can't fake that, but faked everything else. Going to post my mum's story because she doesn't have an account. She was a home economics teacher, and specifically she had one class called relationship psychology where every day, to start the class, she would read through that cheesy Dear Abby newspaper advice column to talk with the class on how they would respond to the problem. One day ahead of class she noticed that a letter published talked about a kid who sounded a lot like a student in her class and was located in our hometown. They always end the letter with a name and city, and my mom was always very involved with her students and their personal lives. The letter talked about a kid who was terrified of going to college and how he got rejected from all the schools he wanted to go to, had no self-confidence, abusive father, money problems, that he would lose all his close friends, couldn't stand the idea of leaving his disabled mother, and that he felt enormous pressure as a first-gen college student and had ultimately decided not to go to college at all. She read it to the class and they discussed, and she could tell the boy in her class was very uncomfortable. After class she asked him about it, and it was in fact a letter written by him. He never thought it would get published and responded to by the Dear Abby column, and was super embarrassed. He, like most students, never even knew what the Dear Abby column was until they took her class. Afterwards she talked through everything with him, and talked with his mother, and evaluated his options on how best to approach college. She taught him finances, loans, scholarship options, his mom's condition, and everything, and got him to a place where he felt better about his future. 4 years later the kid ended up being the speaker at his college graduation of over 7,000 kids, met his wife at college, all of his groomsmen, and got a killer job through his career fair on campus before graduating. She flew out and attended as he invited her. Not a teacher, but I went to my 10-year reunion. Back in high school we had a kid who has Asperger's and was a little weird. He was, however, amazing at the yo-yo, having picked one up during middle school when we had that yo-yo trick assembly. After everyone else had stopped walking the dog in 8th grade, this guy was doing more and more elaborate tricks every day during lunch. He was bullied and teased, but he continued doing what he loved. So, at our 10-year reunion, people from every strata of high school popularity was there, including this guy. He was his same old self, but more confident. I asked him if he still yo-yos, and he busted out his custom-made titanium yo-yo that he said he made on a CNC lathe. He then starts to do some tricks and a large crowd gathered around. It was quite the show. He had gotten very good. When he finished, people clapped and cheered, and even the jockey dudes from back in the day fist bumped him and told him how badass he was. The most amazing transformation was everyone else. Nobody teased him for being who he was anymore. They now admired him for being so passionate about something. A former student of mine grew up in an ultra-conservative Christian home. He and his siblings were never allowed to socialize with other students during lunch and recess. Whenever they had free time at school they had to read their Bibles. In science class they were forbidden to learn about evolution. Every essay, short story, personal narrative, and poem he wrote for me involved some kind of Christian theme. When he graduated, he immediately enrolled in a big seminary in our area, and that was the last I heard of him until his class invited me to their 10-year reunion. This same kid showed up with sleeve tattoos, piercings everywhere, slamming beer after beer after beer, and smoking like a locomotive. When I asked what he was doing now, He responded he currently was a bouncer at a strip club. So, not a school reunion story, but I thought I'd input a happy story, since a lot of these are a bit depressing. My mom used to be a teacher for children with severe learning disabilities. By severe, I mean the majority of students she taught could barely do anything for themselves. Now she's retired, but one day we were in the supermarket when a lady comes up to my mom and hugs her. She seems a bit surprised at first and asks if they know each other, and it turns out she used to be in her class. We get in the car and mom instantly breaks down in tears. After a few minutes she explains to me that 20 years ago, that lady had been unable to speak, walk or even go to the bathroom by herself. And yet there she was, out on her own, talking to us, and doing her own grocery shopping. What probably made my mom cry was that after so long and accomplishing so much, this girl actually remembered her old teacher. In my high school they used some of the class reps as volunteers in order to organize this 10-year meeting. My at that time class master told me that a super good looking woman, she was 29 back then, I was 17, and damn she was top 3 woman I've ever seen in my life, was one of the dirtiest students she ever had. She would not shower for days, and at some point she was out of school for a week or so because she got a really bad infection from her period and lack of showers. Also one of the smartest guys from that generation, who went to veterinary school, was convicted for selling some sort of animals drugs to people and used some on himself. He seemed super normal, but when he spoke you could tell that there were some clicks in his brains that were not connecting at all. Losing the idea in the middle of the sentence, couldn't keep the voice at the same tone for more than 10 seconds, going from whispering to shouting and stuff. I sat beside this girl Joni in grade 8. She was so smart and really pretty. She would always finish the year with like 95 averages, even as high as 98 in some subjects. I was a hooligan, that's why I was seated next to her. She would help me with stuff, always let me copy her homework PCAD tests. There's no way I would have passed without her. The teacher would always say you'll never get anywhere if you just copy Joni all the time. She works the drive-thru at R&W now, has a herd of children with some skeezy looking dude who's in and out of jail. Breaks my heart when I see her. So much potential to end up flipping burgers. I always wonder where it went wrong for her. Not a teacher, but interesting nonetheless. The valedictorian of my graduating class lost his full ride to state college after 2 quarters because of drinking and drugs. He grew up in a protected and very strict household. Once he left and got exposed to the temptations of life, he didn't know how to handle it. Last I heard he's working odd jobs and is bumming around our hometown. Not a teacher, but we just had our reunion. There was this one dude who was just not even cheeky, but just odd. Always trying to fit in and never quite managing it. He had a couple popular friends though, so most times he could use that as a way in. I remember at graduation he was just approaching random groups of people trying to start conversations and was just super unsuccessful at it. And I was a huge geek myself. So if this dude appeared socially inept to me of all people, he was super socially inept. Because I was too inept myself to notice stuff like this, unless it was bad. Anyways, he's on all the bus benches around me now, because he's the member of the Legislative Assembly for an area close to me now. The first time I saw it, I was like WTF. Like there's no way this kid could have gotten people to vote for him. I guess even the most socially inept can grow up and thrive. But here I'm still as socially inept as I was in high school, lol. Not my story, but an alumni from my fraternity at university, whom I know quite well. He graduated in 2003. In high school he was overweight, nerdy, lower class, and his extended family had multiple heroin addicts, more common than you'd think in Ohio. As you can probably guess, he had a rough life. No one seemed to acknowledge him, and he struggled in school because of personal issues holding him back. When it came to college, he was rejected from everywhere but a community college. So community college he went. Because he wasn't under his parents' control at that point, and he was surrounded by all new people, he got a job and a gym membership. He ended up getting in very good shape, and he aced all of his classes. He decided to apply to universities so he could see where the journey would take him. He got a full tuition scholarship and a Pell Grant, which covered the full cost of attending my school. He graduated in 5 years with 2 BS degrees and a master's, took classes every summer to do that. Now he is a vice president of a very large clothing company. He is my biggest inspiration and says that no matter how much people try to hold you back, and even if you have to start from rock bottom, you can always make it to the top. You just need to stay motivated, have full dedication, and seek how to improve yourself every day both as a person and a professional. His idea of the key to a successful life is to have good mental health, to always try to improve yourself, be proud of what you have, and to help others do the same.